So we're live now. Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming in, and welcome to a very special show. Now, everybody who's been watching our shows previously or looking at the page will probably know what tonight's show's about. The title says it all. I am joined by Elvis expert and fan, Melanie Wade. These two gentlemen don't need an introduction, but I'm going to give them one anyway, since they came. We've got CRA's Mr. David Espinosa and Mr. Craig Arhens joining us again. So I look forward to every show, but I've been looking forward to this one since, I don't know, October, November last year, sometime for a while. Let's say for a while. So tonight we're going to be talking about a man who came from nothing, basically, to become the greatest entertainer this world will ever know. He turned the music world on its head and made it possible for countless artists, singers to follow their dream into the world of music. And the man who's almost half a century after his tragic and sudden passing is even bigger today than he was back then. So, of course, we're talking about Elvis Presley. And I've got my three guests who are all big Elvis fans, which, is quite normal. And who isn't an Elvis fan? I think he's the one singer that, even if you don't like him, there's always one Elvis song that everybody likes. Everybody's got a kind of favourite Elvis song. Even if I'm not a fan, but I do like Return to Sender, Jailhouse Rock, whatever it might be. So tonight we're going to have a wee slideshow prepared that we're going to go through each section of Elvis's life, his career. But I'd like to ask these guys first how their interest in Elvis sparked off. So, lady, there's Laura saying hello, good evening. I'm so happy this live is happening. I don't need to listen to Countdown. And Laura's one of our team.
Exactly.
So I was saying, Melanie, before we started, everybody's fed up with me talking about this upcoming show. So there's quite a few people who'll be happy once it's done, because then I'll stop talking about it. Well, maybe.
Thank goodness.
Maybe. My partner's over there giving her 2 pence worth in the background, So we'll start with you, Melanie. Tell us about, yourself and how your interest in the man came about.
Yeah, so I never grew up with any Elvis fans. No one in my family are Elvis fans. So the first I saw of him was Lilo and Stitch, in the Lilo and Stitch movie. They had all of his music. But I didn't get into him until lockdown. So I would go into charity shops because my dad gave me his record player. So I'd buy old records, and I got a Paul Anka record, and that's how I got into the 50s music. And then I found Elvis, fell in love with his music, but I didn't know much about him, and it was just about the music for me. And then the Elvis movie came out, and I learned more about his life, and I think that's how I became super interested in him as a person, and that's where I guess I kind of found my little obsession with him. But yeah, it's been awesome.
Craig, that's Laura's husband. He's also part of it. It's nice to have a break from all that paranormal stuff. But as you see, really, you didn't know much about his life, and I find that a lot of people don't know much about his life. They'll read the odd story in the press or on TikTok or whatever it is, but they don't really know the man. I mean, we're no experts, do you know what I mean? But they don't really know who Elvis. They just see Elvis, he was a singer, and that was it. That's people's opinion of him. But there was so much more to this man than people actually realise, So, Mr. Arhens, how did you become involved in the Elvis craze?
Well, I mean, growing up in that whole era, my mom was a huge fan, and as a child being born in the 50s and a child of the 60s, you're there for the whole ride, the whole journey. And my mom was a huge fan, and just the moves of Elvis, the whole thing. There was nothing like it, and it was interesting. My dad eventually got on board, but not immediately. It's kind of like my mom's thing. And so my mom was a huge fan, but kind of watered it down a little bit when my dad was around. But so I didn't quite understand what was going on until I got older. Then, of course, we were all into the whole Elvis thing. And like we were talking earlier, I didn't really appreciate at the time until later on what a great actor he was and just what a great talent he was. But yeah, I mean, we were there beginning to the end, the whole Elvis ride, certainly here in the States. I don't know how it would have been in the UK, but we were there for the whole, at least, our family and myself, we were there for the whole journey.
I don't know how it was in the UK in the 50 hours and around then. I'm glad to say, I'm still kind of young chicken, sort of. But, I mean, my interest in Elvis was right before his death, actually. I heard this on Top of the Pops. It was a show that was on over here. It featured the sort of current songs that were in the charts, sort of thing. And I heard this, it was Way Down. That I heard. And I heard it on the TV, and I thought, well, I like that. I take the Elvis, I take it. And I thought, and so I went out and bought it. And then I played it over, this one single over and over again. And then I went out and Elvis from the movies. That was the first album I bought. And that was it. I was, I was hooked, and almost tragically he passed away. So what were you, Mr. Espinosa? Where did it all start for you?
Well, amazingly, I think you said something that really triggered it for me. The first song, everybody here has basically said the first time I heard him, the first song I heard, regardless of the song, it's like, what is it about this guy's voice that can penetrate you emotionally, your humanity? He had like 7 octaves, his range, right? He could, incredible voice. And he had acting skills that weren't, exploited as deeply as he wanted to, but he did some good work in some of it in his films. So, but what was the mystique about Elvis as a kid? I was just blown away by him the first time I heard him and seen him. I wanted to be him. He could sing. All the girls loved him. He could dance. He was a movie star. Oh my gosh. He had it all going on. And of course, I couldn't sing. I could dance, maybe. Okay. I eventually learned to act, but that took a while. So, but nonetheless, I think for me, the first time, I think I was 6 or 7. And I was it. I was an Elvis fan. And then you said something too, Craig, about your mom. It was mainly her thing. Well, it was mainly a girl thing. And it was the girls who were buying those albums, not the guys. The guys were embarrassed because they couldn't be Elvis. And they didn't want anybody to know they liked him.
Yeah.
Because it made them look like they were effeminate or some kind of a sissy in the 50s and 60s. And I was like, man, I really liked him. And guys would look at me like, you like Elvis Presley? I go, yeah. He got all the girls. What are you talking about? Hell yeah, I like him. So since I was a kid, man, I've always liked Elvis Presley, and tried to sing like him, all his songs. I've seen his movies, loved him. It was a shame the way he went. But, there you go, incredible man.
I think everybody wanted to be Elvis. I didn't want to be Elvis because I just don't have the looks, the talent or the moves and what have you. But he did just kind of explode onto the music scene. I was listening to an interview that Martin Sheen done. I was listening to earlier on. He was talking about Elvis, and he was saying back when he was a teenager in high school, they would go to the local diner, whatever it is, in the jukebox, and the girls would play Patsy Cline or something like that, and the guys would play Perry Como kind of sort of music sort of thing. So, but when Elvis came along, when he came out, even the guys started listening to Elvis. And Martin says he kind of brought the guys and the girls together, music-wise, if that makes sense. It was quite it was quite interesting. But I'll put the slides up. Obviously, it starts with the beginning to the end of his life career sort of thing, and you talk about each one in that period of his life. If that's all right with you, folks.
Sure.
Cue him. Let's see him.
Wow. That's a great shot.
Look at his-
I think this is going to be one of the most famous Elvis photographs ever. You know, I think everybody looks. I mean, you look at old black and white photos and you think, "Who's that?" You know, don't know. But you look at this one, and everybody knows who it is. You know, and as I said at the beginning, he came from nothing. You know, he was born 8th of January 1935, Tupelo, Mississippi. Vernon and Gladys were his parents. They never had anything. They never had much. Vernon was a truck driver. He'd done some time in prison for check fraud, you know. So Elvis still had a twin, Jesse Carn, who died at birth, obviously. And so Gladys's mum, she was very doting. You know, she was at a right church goer. And this is how Elvis got introduced to music. You know, she would take him along when he was old. You know, take him along to church every Sunday as well. And then I think when he was about 10, he moved to Memphis with his family. How do you feel when you see this photograph? Every time I see it, you get a wee kind of, I get a wee kind of tingle. I know it might sound daft, but you know, do you always instantly recognise this photo?
He's striking. Even as a baby, you can see it in his looks, his eyes. He's a very good-looking human being. You see the looks from his mother and his father, and I think you're right. They do look like they're struggling. The looks on their face, they look like they're struggling. That's apparent. Their clothes, and this is you can believe they paid for this picture to have done. So they dressed up for it. So that says a lot about the time where he comes from. Yeah.
Melanie or Craig, what's your thoughts on that?
It was the very first picture of him, wasn't it? It was like the earliest picture, I believe. Don't quote me, but you can just, I think, tell how much he looks like his mum here. I know a lot of people don't think that he looks like her, but I think he looks just like Gladys. And obviously we didn't get to see him really age much past like 40 something, but I think he would have looked like her as he got older as well. So that's always what I think when I see him as a baby as well. You can just tell it's him. It's the same face.
Yeah.
What were you, Craig?
Well, the father, there's just a lot of business going on behind his eyes. His mind is just spinning. You know, the impression, financial struggles, worries, concerns. I mean, he's getting his picture taken, but there's just a lot more going on in his mind, financially or something. There's just something. His wheels are spinning. His mom, just strong character. And, you know, what's interesting is, you know, young Elvis there, just the future ahead of this young child, and you know, the bond between he and his mother. But the father just there's a lot of business going on behind the eyes. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and you know, as you say, you can tell his father. The eyes tell everything. You know, over the years your face changes. You know. Obviously, as you get older, above you. But the thing that always gets me about this photograph is his eyes. They never changed. You know, I mean, that might sound stupid. You know, he didn't change it, but his facial, you know, looks changed as you get older, obviously. But you can tell just by looking at his eyes that it's Elvis.
And he's still got them pouty lips. Yeah. That's the baby.
It does show that back then, I mean, it was 3 years old when that was taken, so that would be 1938. That was taken. And they had nothing, basically, you know. And I think that's what makes Elvis's story even more incredible, you know, where he actually came from.
Oh, yeah.
So here we have him. I think he's about 14, 15. This was taken in Memphis. Bear with me a wee second. I'm just.
Good night.
I was getting ready for something there, guys. Sorry about that. So that's taken about 14, 15 years old, and you can see the look is there. You know, that Elvis look. But again, as Craig said, going by his clothes, the rolled up jeans. I don't know if that was the fashion back then or no. The rolled up jeans.
Yeah, that was definitely the fashion back
that
then.
was the look.
Yeah, that's straight up the look. He also has, you can see he has I don't want to use the word wrongly, but don't misunderstand this. He has a dark side to him that is always identified with the underdog, the less than. I think because of the way he was raised, where he comes from, how he associated with the Black community, loved their music, they accepted him as part of them. So I think he always felt like he was on the outside of things, and that came out in the characters that he played initially as well. When he first came on the scene, as the bad guy, the black hair and that whole look, coming in, the tough guy. That was very appealing at the time. Remember James Dean and a lot of other guys were coming out at that same time that had that look, had that appeal to them. Marlon Brando, same time, early Marlon Brando, all these guys. So he was fitting right in there. He knew he had something. That's what I always thought since I first thought about him. How does he think about himself? How did he think about himself? When I see a picture like this, the confidence, you can see it right there, just the way he stands. He doesn't have a timid stance. He's boldly facing. There's something to him. He knew something about him was special. That's what I think.
It has got that kind of smouldering, all the way through his life. He does certain lucky times. It was kind of smouldering sort of with the act. Melanie will know what I mean. She's a witness. She'll have a better idea what I'm talking about.
I know what you mean.
I mean, I'm all right. He was a really handsome guy. He was a good-looking guy, and he's been called the most photographed, person in history, basically. So it did have, even back then. But you said, it's interesting you say that, David, because at school he was seen as a bit of an outsider, simply because of his style. He loved to shop down in Beale Street and wear extravagant clothes, the jackets and the turned-up coat, which would later on become his trademark, So with him getting that kind of fashion sense, to me, that would suggest that he knew, I'm different. I'm not anything special, but I'm different.
He hated wearing jeans though. So later in life, he point blank refused to wear denim jeans because he had to wear, that was all he could afford growing up. So if he had to do a movie and they made him wear jeans, it would make him really angry because he thought it would make him look poor again and be laughed at again.
And the picture beside it is from I might be wrong with it, but 90% is for the Louisiana hayride, 1956, and you can see the look in his face. It's that's the look, the smile, the cheekbones, and the eye. It's still the kind of smouldering look around the eyes. This is when it really took off, and I mean, a lot of people say Sam Phillips discovered Elvis. Now, I want your opinion on this, but everybody says, Sam Phillips owns Sun Records. He discovered Elvis. To me, he never discovered Elvis. It was Marion Kessler that discovered Elvis. Also, she was Sam's kind of right-hand woman sort of thing. And it was her that Elvis spoke to when he went in to record My Happiness for his mother as a birthday present. And it was her that brought him to Sam's attention. You need to listen to this. This guy's got something. And so I think, as far as it was Marion Kessler, it was Marion Kesler that discovered him. What do you think?
Yeah, she was the one that pushed for him to record "That's All Right, Mama," wasn't she? Because I believe he didn't want Elvis to, because he sounded like too black, I think was the words that I read.
Isn't that unique how they loved the sound, and the sound was making a lot of money, and it was being emulated by a lot of artists, influencing great artists like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I mean, Little Richard as well, doing things at that time. And when a guy like Elvis comes on, he has all the right ingredients.
Yeah.
Bam. And he sings those songs, and now they're acceptable. Hound Dog. I mean, come on, you can't get it more bluesy and downright dirty than Hound Dog at the time, the original version, what that guy was about. So, yeah, and I agree with both of you. I think she's the one that discovered him as well, too, because he did go in to record that song for his mama. Isn't that strange how his mother, well, not strange at all, but how influential his mother was, as most of ours are to us, whether in a negative or a positive way, but how influential. And he had such love and faith for his mother. And I think a lot of that evolved out of his association with the churches and his gospel singing, because as you know, very dominant in those churches, the females, the women. They carry those. It shows in his music. So, yeah, a very interesting man. Multifaceted.
Good point.
I mean, because that's what is interesting. Music first kind of sparks us, as we said, in church. That's where he first got gospel music, and then he used to go down to like Beale Street and that, and Memphis, and listen to the coloured musicians, coloured singers, on Beale Street. And I mean, back then, I heard a story a long time ago, that Bill Haley was big back then, kind of 1955 kind of time, but he was refusing to change with the times, music-wise. He had this certain style, and he refuses. And the kids in America, they were looking for something different. They wanted something fresh, and rock and roll was dying out. Because Bill Haley was normal changing. And then Elvis came along, and as Elvis described it, he mixed gospel with rhythm and blues. And Elvis came along with That's All Right, Mama. And it was an instant hit. Sam Phillips took it to Dewey Phillips, who played it on air. And it was just a roller coaster from then on. Everybody was phoning in, who is this guy? We want to hear this again. And it was being played constantly over and over, and they actually had to hunt Elvis down. Nobody knew Elvis was back there. Nobody knew where he was, because they wanted him back at the studio, and they found him hiding in a movie theatre. And he says, "Look, you need to come back. The country's going nuts for this song." And I think that's when the birth of rock and roll really happened.
Interestingly, the rockabilly, prior to rock and roll really even taking off, rockabilly came out of the South, and it's a mixture of like almost bluegrass and a lot of other cultural fundamental music genres mixing, and even with slave songs. I mean, you can go really and start to put those together, and that's what gave birth to all this business. And he, as you already said, he actually brought it to the foreground. Bam! And then it exploded. And next thing you know, we have all these other artists, white artists, who are doing music in the same genre, the same style, trying to emulate what he's doing. I mean, Roy Orbison, for example, great voice, incredible voice. Elvis was a little bit jealous of Roy's voice, as a matter of fact. They were friends, but Roy didn't have the look. He didn't have the wiggle. he didn't have the performance base that Elvis had. So way different. But yeah, you're right. How something starts and gets going, and the rest is, well, what do we say? Rock and roll history.
The rest is us. So, Melanie, if you the photograph of him there, 1956, 57, if you're out one night and you saw him in a club in the present day, what would your thoughts be? Obviously, it wouldn't be Elvis, but saw a guy look like that. What would your thoughts be?
Well, you would just think like, oh my gosh, that guy is like the most handsome man I've ever seen. I think that's what I would think anyway. I don't know, he just had such confidence, and he had the look, but he had more than that. I think it was just his energy and like his charisma. He was never like cocky or like arrogant, even though he could have been. He just never gave off that vibe. So I think that's what made people like him as well. And I think that's why so many young people still like him today, because there's just something about him, and it's more than just how he physically looks. It's just a vibe he gives off. So I think he would be really popular today if he was a young artist in today's world.
Well, you're spot on. You say, he wasn't arrogant or anything. And he could, there's been many, many young singers, they're young, they're good looking, they've got tons of money, all the girls want them, and they're out there, and they're, that will look at me, I'm God's gift to the world, sort of thing, but Elvis wasn't like that. He was very, he was out there, but he was also very humble. He knew where he came from. He knew what it was like. You say they were wearing jeans and stuff. He knew where he came from. He knew that how they struggled, and that stayed with him for the rest of his life. He never ever forgot that, and he never turned down an autograph. He never turned down a photo. You get these people, celebs, that are, no, I don't want my photograph taken. No, I'm not doing any autographs. And Elvis would, there's many, many things about him, but he never ever turned anybody away.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that itself speaks volumes for him. He had the world at his feet. 1957, he had the world at his feet already. He was 22 years old, and he could do anything, but he always kept it in check, if that makes sense. So 1957, Hollywood started, he's had numerous, hits up until in Hollywood beckons, and by this time he's met the Colonel Nicola, Melanie, what the hell I get Nicola face, Melanie, I saw your TikTok about the Colonel.
Yes.
And it was spot on. So by this time, Colonel Parker's in control, basically. He's his manager. And he starts on the film, the road to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I think that's that photograph there. Also, this one on the right-hand side, he's got that smouldering look again, but the other one, everybody knows that one. Even if you're not a fan, everybody knows Jailhouse Rock, which I think was one of his best movies. That's just my opinion.
Something interesting about Jailhouse Rock, he had a lot of artistic control over that film. He choreographed all of the dance routine, in the jailhouse. He choreographed that whole thing, from what I understand. He was awesome that way. He just had this thing about how he could see it in his head, the movement. So it was pretty slick. And I agree, that's one of his better movies. King Creole was good as well. It was after this one, I believe, shot after this. But this was a very good movie. And that scene, to this day, that scene still just rocks. It's been replicated by a lot of other people, but none as good.
And as you say, it's dancing moves. One thing I forgot was, the controversy that he caused because of how he moved. You know, the Ed Sullivan Show to be filmed for waist down. Waist down.
Yeah.
Sorry, no waist up. I'm on fire.
Yeah.
And then I always remember he told a story that he was appearing in Florida one time, and the police were called in to monitor the show. Now, whether this was Elvis joking or not, I don't know, but he says that the only thing he could move was the little finger.
Yep.
He told this story on this in the comeback special. He said because the police filmed the whole thing, and he wasn't allowed to budge. So that as well, I think, shows the impact that he had on society. Then it shows you how society was, you know, kind of prim and proper. You know, then all of a sudden there's this young 20-year-old guy who's wiggling his bits everywhere. You know, for a better, I want a better word, I don't know. And all the parents are like that. You know, he was banned in a lot of places. You know, the controversy he caused was unbelievable, but it was the Elvis causing it. It was society causing it.
There you go with that bad boy thing. You know, all they did was enhance it for him and make him more popular.
Yeah.
Incredible publicity for free. He couldn't ask for greater publicity. That's for damn sure. And he knew how to milk it. Well, Parker knew how to milk it, Colonel Parker. He knew how to work it, and he worked it, and unfortunately worked Elvis right on to death, in my opinion. But that's
100%, David, 100% true.
Right. But I know I already know your answer, Melanie, but I've got your views on Colonel Parker.
Yeah, I'm not his biggest fan. Yeah, I don't really. I think he did some really great stuff. I'm not like, oh, he was the worst person in the world, but I think everything he did was out of a place of greed. I don't think he ever only thought of Elvis. I think he thought of his wallet the majority of the time, especially towards the end of his Hollywood career. He just hated his films. He had like no leeway in his scripts. If you guys have seen that scene in Harem Scarum where he's like spinning a little girl around, and he just did not want, he came out and said how much he didn't want to film that scene. And it's just like he had absolutely no say in some things in his own career, and I just think that's so wrong. I think he was just completely bled dry in the end by the Colonel.
Just you're saying about one of the scenes he hated. The one that comes to mind, Melanie, is and I hate to say it, I mean, we've all got an Elvis song we don't like, you know, well, it could have been better, you know. It's Old MacDonald. And when they filmed that scene on the back of the pickup truck with I think it was chickens or some kind of birds in that, I think that as well, when they realised, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, the Beatles had came, you know, the Beatles had went to America, and all these other bands were starting up, and people were starting to ask, you know, where's Elvis? Where is he? And he was sitting in the back of a pickup truck singing Old MacDonald. But as you see, you know, he had to sign contracts. The Colonel had, you know, basically they were ironclad. So it was, you know, he had to do them, and most of it was through greed on the Colonel's part.
Those contracts would never fly today.
No, never.
Entertainment law is a lot of it developed out of abuses just like that over a period of time. So yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But and regarding Colonel Tom Parker, I think his motivations, as you've already aptly stated, were his wallet, and I think he kept Elvis drugged morning, day, and night. Got him drugged to wake him up, got him drugged to put him to sleep. And eventually that took a toll on his system, which led to his heart failure and his other problems. He, at some point, albeit we all have free will, but when he's trusting somebody who says, hey, look, you know, this will help you. Just do this show. You're good to go. Don't worry. I'll get you up in the morning. Before you know it, you're strung out.
Yeah.
That's it. And Hollywood and a lot of other industries, the music industry has done that to many other people. Judy Garland, prime example. It's not unusual how this happens. You get somebody like this with such great talents, but they're artists. They're not business people. So they don't think like business people and they don't protect themselves. They trust that other people are going to do that for them. And it's not going to happen. One of the reasons, not to get off on another subject, but one of the reasons I was in law school, I studied entertainment law, labor law, and a lot of contracts and stuff like that for that reason. I always felt like the more I knew about that, I could protect myself for whatever projects I'm working in, etc. Don't get me wrong. I've never had the ability to manage contracts for myself at that level. So Craig would be like, yeah, let's do that. That'd be a blessing. We're working on it. Working on it.
We're prepared. We are prepared.
We are prepared.
I've got a question to put up just before I put it up. I think when the relationship first started out, back in the late 50s, I think they had a good relationship back then. Colonel Parker seemed like an okay guy. I'll look after you. Manage your career. You get loads of bookings. That kind. And they did start off, but as time went on, Parker, he realised just how big Elvis was getting, and he realised he could demand more money. Melanie says, well, the war. This is where the greed sort of kicked in, and it just escalated for there, basically. Now, what we're all saying tonight, folks, it's no, they're not stating this as a fact. We're just tonight is just our thoughts on Elvis's career and what have you. We're not on to. What do you think of Flaming Star?
I think that's one of his better acting performances. I've always liked the movie. He's done a couple of really good movies like that. He always wanted to be just an actor without having to whip out the guitar and start singing in the back of a pickup truck, as you already said. but that happens. And this movie, Flaming Star, I thought was really good.
I'll give that thumbs up. What about you, Melanie? What's your on Flaming Star?
I didn't really like that one. That wasn't one of my favorites, but I kind of like the crappy ones. My favorite one is It Happened at the World's Fair. So that's like my favorite one. I like GI Blues as well, but no, Flaming Star isn't one of my favorites. It's not the worst. It's not like Double Trouble bad, but like it just isn't one of my. It's not my.
He's
favorite.
Not singing. And that was what it is. His acting performance, and what I liked about it was his acting performance. He was very good in it. He dies pretty damn good too in it. But you're right. It wasn't one of his box office hits. He wasn't singing.
Yeah.
And GI Blue, like Blue Hawaii. When I saw Blue Hawaii, that was it. I'm going to Hawaii at some point in my life, which I did, and I eventually lived there for several years. But the influence that he had, incredible. Look at some of these other movies, Girls, Girls, Girls. What was that movie about? Girls, girls, girls. I don't know, he hated some of those movies that he had to make. Yeah.
What were you, Craig? What's your on Flaming Star?
I would say probably Blue Hawaii. I remember we saw the Surf Theater down Hayton Beach. A bunch of us went. But there wasn't really one that stood out that was a dud for any of us, or one over the top. But that's one that would probably be up there of the top 3, I would say. And like David, I'd never been to Hawaii, and but that prompted me that wanted to go to Hawaii. So there you go.
I like Blue Hawaii, GI Blues. I would say GI Blues was my favorite.
Well, you know what movie I really like that he doesn't get a lot of credit for is King Creole. He did great movie with Carolyn Jones, Walter Matthau, The acting was very good in it. He's good in it as an actor, and his performance is off the hook. His singing, his dancing, everything. So it has a good combination, good storyline in it. It's not just him running around, trying to save the carnival or the racetrack or something else while he gets the girl, which is generally all the formula. So yeah.
The,
That was his favorite movie as well, wasn't it? I think he came out and said that was the best movie that he ever made in his opinion because it was the most serious.
Yeah.
So that was the one he liked the most.
Yeah.
He wanted more, as you said, he wanted more serious acting role, and a lot of the films David just mentioned, he saved the carnival, saved the fair, always got the girl in the end, sort of thing. I think that kind of storyline started to wear a bit thin, and I think Elvis seen that as well, because I think the average time for shooting a film was 2 weeks or something, and then he'd be back to Graceland for X amount of weeks and away back, shoot another fortnight shooting a film. And I think the kind of storyline started just to follow the same thing, and he kind of stereotyped into that role. He's going to say, he's going to fall in love. The girl's going to say no first. He's going to save the day. Boy wins girl. End of story. And I think he was totally fed up with it. Give me something I can get my teeth into, to show people how good an actor I am. I'm not just a guy that sings the chickens, basically. So I think so I clicked that too quick. My favourite is GI Blues. That's up the top there. So 1958, the year that every Elvis fans world collapsed when he got called up to the army. What kind of impact what do you think was going through his mind and the fans' mind when this happened?
Well, think about when he was getting out, what was going on. Rock and roll was taking off in a different direction. The Beatles were coming up. We had some serious different groups. Bob Dylan was out there doing stuff. A whole lot of different genres were coming forth in a very strong manner, and they weren't doing his style of music necessarily. They were capitalizing on it. So what was he going to do? But I think you're right. He's so contemporary. He could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And I think he realized that, and he got back to it when he did that comeback in '69 in the black leather. I watched it on TV. I was just like, wow, he still has it. He was so good. And he did exactly what they didn't want him to do. So it was quite interesting how this guy saw himself. His style of dress, you were commenting earlier, he started wearing stuff with fringe and the big collars. He got more of a mod type look. I don't want to use the word hippie. He didn't go that far, but he certainly started getting more mod with the big colors and dressing a little more broader, even though he got rid of his bad guy look, until '69. Well, '69 it paid off for him, but then thereafter he went to Vegas, right? And he became a whole different person. Became a Vegas showman. And I think that's where he hated himself.
Do you think, when Uncle Sam called, I think that's what they used to say back then, Uncle Sam's calling, whatever. Do you think maybe thought that was the end of his career? I'm getting in the army, I'm going to be away 2 years. Lord knows where I'm going to be. That's my career over.
Yeah, I remember I read in Anita Wood's book, which was his girlfriend at the time, he would always say how he felt like he would just be forgotten when he went away, and like when he came back, no one would have any interest in him. So I think he was really scared that he would be gone for too long. He would become irrelevant, basically. And I think, right in the middle of this, his mum dies. so it's like a super difficult time for him anyway. But he was really worried about his mom because she had this idea that he was going to die when he was drafted, because I guess she grew up in a different sort of time when if you did go away you wouldn't come back. So I think there was loads going through his head, but yeah, I think he thought he would come back and like no one would care about him, which obviously didn't happen.
Mhm.
It was. What were you, Craig? Would you think was going through his head?
I think Melanie nailed it. I remember years ago I read something along those lines, and when he came back, a bit of a surprise that he was still as popular as he was. And I remember, David, I'm glad you mentioned that back in '69. Now, I was what, 15, 14, something like that. I remember watching Elvis, that comeback show, if you will, back on TV. That was sensational. I remember that in the late '60s.
I've got a picture of his comeback special. So that's the job. I meant to put a picture of the comeback special with Frank Sinatra in. Obviously, Elvis done his 2 years, and then March 1960. His time's up. He's back home. He landed at Prestwick Airport, which I'm going to put in. It's just 10 minutes from where we are. He landed there in March on his way back to Germany to refuel. So I think he was here for about an hour, something like that. And then he was away again. One question for you, I can get back to that. When he get enlisted in the army, what do you think was going through Parker's mind when his boy was going to get, when his boy was, getting in the army?
I'm screwed.
What do you think was going through his head when he's sitting there thinking, right, I didn't expect that? Because I don't think, this is just my opinion, I don't think the world expected him to get called up simply because he was Elvis, and obviously back then nobody was excused for doing army service. So I think that was a big shock for all his fans, because it'd be the last thing they expected to happen, Our heroes going away to the army. So what do you guys think was Parker's kind of mindset then?
But isn't there a theory that the colonel was the one who basically suggested that he go, because that he wanted to clean up his reputation, because with all the police stuff, I remember I read about it, and that is very much how the new movie makes it look. Is that the colonel wanted him to go off for 2 years and then come back this all-American guy, and he wasn't wiggling anymore. I think that was a theory that I follow, but I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows, but that's just what I think.
I think you're right, because you look at everything he did afterwards, none of that reflects a bad guy image. He was always the good guy, the hero, saving whatever it was that was going on. And you're right, no more wiggling. He changed a lot of that stuff at that point. So, I think the colonel was trying to reassess the program and restock and redress, and let's see if we can make him into another image, because he saw the talent in this guy. He saw the talent. His ability to be an actor, a singer, all these things means he could basically change his character to fit whatever the colonel felt was good. And unfortunately, Elvis trusted him.
Yeah.
Very, very. I know obviously, of course, his time in Germany is where he met Priscilla, which should be going to be a major part in his life, in the not so distant future in 1960. But I put this photograph up because, also you were talking about the army and Priscilla, and by this time Priscilla would have been living at Graceland by the time, this was Viva Las Vegas, and Priscilla would have been, she would have moved to Memphis, be living at Graceland, separate rooms and all that, regardless what people say, separate rooms out for Elvis. But this lady here, I found very interesting, because the stories are still going on today about their, Elvis and Anne Margaret would have ended up man and wife if Priscilla hadn't been in the picture. What do you guys think? There was they did have a very, very close relationship, shall we say.
They had really good chemistry.
I think Elvis had too many women throwing themselves at him all the time for him to take any one of them real serious. So him handpicking Priscilla, he knew where she came from. He knew these other women, if they were so easily willing to lay down with him on first instance, who else would they be so willing to do this with? Anybody who looked better than him, sang better than him, whatever. So I think he looked at women very special. He obviously loved women, but he hadn't picked Priscilla.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of unique. I mean, in its own right, especially a guy who's standing right there looking at Anne Margaret's backside while he sings. Yeah, I think Elvis loved all women and wanted to love as many as he could, and they wanted to love him. So there's, how do you assess that as a good or a bad? That's a moral dilemma that he had with himself. That, and I'll be very honest, that a whole lot of us guys wished we had at that age. That's for sure.
Can I just say something? Just you see that he's looking at Anne Margaret's backside. Now I've seen that photograph many times. That particular photograph. He's actually signed "The Lady Loves Me."
I know.
And I've watched that wee video. I don't know how many times I've seen it. I think it's a brilliant song. The way he's you love me and she's a fat chance kind of thing. I've never ever once thought that he's looking at her rear end. But see if you know him, whenever I see that photograph, that's what I'm going to. I'm going to think these women
I guess I'm speaking as having been on too many sets and watching people and knowing that this guy was with Anne Margaret and many other of his co-stars, just about all of them. Mm-hmm. That if he hasn't at some point did not glance down at her backside, then that's probably not Elvis. That's an impersonator, and we need to check that photo. I'm just being a wise guy. Don't get mad at me.
What would you think, Melanie? Do you think she would, if Priscilla hadn't been there, Anne Margaret would have been Mrs. Elvis Presley or Anne Margaret?
Yeah. So there's a lot of theories around Anne Margaret. So I think she kind of knew about Priscilla and she was really unhappy because she came out and said he was her soulmate, and then she leaked to the press that he proposed to her and they were going to get married. And that was why he ended things with her, apparently, because he was like, well, she's just using me for my fame. She's leaked this and it's not true. And she's just like another one of the vultures. But I think that he really cared about Anne Margaret more than he cared about his other female co-stars. And I think that I can't think who said it, but someone said he was in his mind thinking, who do I want to marry, Priscilla or Anne? Because he was being put under a lot of pressure again by the colonel that he had to marry. So it was between these two women and he didn't know which one to go for. And the colonel definitely wanted it to be Priscilla. So that's who he went for. And obviously Anne messed up by leaking untrue information to the press because she thought that would then make him marry her because she leaked it and everyone thought it was happening, but obviously it kind of backfired on her. But she still says to this day, like, Elvis is my soulmate, never loved a man the way I love him. I don't know if she had like a husband or anything, but that kind of sucks for him. But yeah, she's always said that they were going to end up together.
Wow.
See,
that might be good that they're lasting, knowing each other's mindset, because they're both entertainers. They might have been really good together and lasted. And that's too bad that it didn't. Yeah.
What were you, Craig? Do you think they would have ended up man and wife? Or
I think that he made a really good choice with Priscilla. it went the way it was supposed to go. So I think good for Elvis. So I think it was a good choice.
Good stuff. There's the lady herself, 1967, May, I believe it was, May 90s. The wedding takes place, and as you all said, he was given a kind of, he had to make a choice. And as Melanie says, I go with Melanie says, well, the Colonel had a lot to do with it. Who would end up being his bride, because there's been stories the past few months, past year, whatever, that he's been called a groomer and all the rest of it, because of the age gap between Priscilla and Elvis. But what a lot of people don't realise, Priscilla was really young when she met Elvis, and then he returned to America after his service, but everything was up front. It was all done in front of Priscilla's parents. I think Priscilla's father was a colonel or a major in the army. And when Elvis wanted Priscilla to move to Memphis, he approached her parents, and her parents were quite happy with it. Everything was above board, and she was there 4 or 5 years before they get married. Separate bedrooms, everything was above board. But then came the day of the wedding, 1967. As you say, he had to make a choice. I'm kind of 50-50 whether it was the right choice or not. I don't know, because he did have deep feelings for Priscilla. He did love her, obviously. But just getting back to what Dave was saying about, the woman and stuff. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people called him a whore master, a whoremonger. He was, in bed with every woman on the planet. But at the end of the day, let's face it, it was Elvis Presley. He was still single. He was probably the best looking guy in the world, the greatest entertainer in the world. He was still a human being. I think that's what a lot of people forget. He was still, take away the image side of it, he was still a person. And Elvis hit it in the nail when he done the press conference in June 1972, prior to his Madison Square Garden concerts. He was asked about, the image, his image, and he says the image is one thing, the human being is another.
Well, something that I think we've overlooked, and we were kind of hitting on it early on in the conversation with his pictures as to his origins. He was a very innocent person. When he first came on the scene, despite his talents, he was a very innocent person, and at his age. And that's why he was taken advantage of. That innocence was maintained throughout his career, why I think he always felt insecure about his abilities, etc., everything else. And having his, I don't know if masculinity is the right word, but having that reaffirmed constantly by women coming on to him, that made him feel worthwhile. But he was truly an innocent. And I honestly believe that, all the way into him even getting married to Priscilla. He wanted that marriage. He wanted husband and wife, like a mother-father situation that he had. But as you already said, he's a human being, and he couldn't help himself or didn't want to help himself. Either way, matters not. The point being, he couldn't. Women were relentless. They would not leave him alone. And at some point, he was always away from his wife. Boom. I don't know what happened, honey. I tripped, fell down, and there she was. So
so that's 67. He's married. 9 months later, Lisa Marie. He's got a daughter. He's got the family. The wife, daughter, and fantastic career, and what have you. And then moving on, the other photograph, you'll probably recognise it. It's part of the 68 the special. That is taken when he's singing Up Above My Head and Saved, as part of it. Just click the next one. And that's what you were talking about, David. This is when I think Elvis really slammed the world before I come to you guys, because in my opinion, he'd been away, you know, for the limelight, music-wise, for about 8 years. You had many groups, artists, he came to America, the UK, you know, they were taking over the charts, but the 68 special, I think Elvis made a statement with it, and I want your guys' opinions. Basically, he came back and he said, listen, I'm the king, and he wiped the floor with everybody else on that 68 special. You know, I mean, he was the leather suit, obviously wore other outfits, but I think the leather suit is the most iconic one for that special. But I think he came back and he punched all his competition right in the face and said, look, I'm back. What do you folks think?
Like I said, I watched it. I was 16. I was like, wow. At school, I'm in high school now, right? And now the Beatles, Rolling Stones, a lot of bands are out there. Santana's come on the scene. There's a lot of bands and music that are just killing it. Everybody was talking about Elvis. Everybody was talking about Elvis and that special. It was like watching The Wizard of Oz once a year. Okay, we talked all year long about watching The Wizard of Oz when it came on, and then we talked about it forever. That's what it was like at 16 in high school, my 16 in 1969, after watching that. So I was blown away. He still had it. I knew forever after that, and I don't know. I was amazed by the guy. Still had that.
But what were you, Melanie?
Well, this was the first time that he had been given complete free reign. So I think he was super excited. He had directors who really understood him and, you know, let him do what he wanted. So I think this was a really great era for Elvis, the 68 special. You know, he was having, I think he had an affair with one of the dancers, Susan Henning, at this time. I think she described it as like a really fun time of his life. The conversations they had, he had just had a baby, but you know, they were saying how this was like the most exciting time of the past 10 years for him. So I really love this era. I love seeing him have fun. He just seems to be going for it in every single comeback special clip. So I love this era.
Mm-hmm. Craig, what was your thoughts on the special?
Well, same with David. I mean, I was 15 or thereabouts in high school, and he came back, and that was that. I mean, that was the buzz. I mean, that was it. I mean, we had the Beatles back then, and Stones, and everybody else, but everybody was talking about Elvis. So he established himself as the guy. Sure.
I mean, my opinion of it was everybody watching. If you've never, even if you're not a fan, if you've never watched the 68 special, watch it. I'm sure it'll be on YouTube or try you'll be somewhere. Give it a watch. My personal thoughts on it was, you know, Elvis started out on a high in the 50s, you know, then the army came, then the film years came, and it took a big dip, and he had all this passion and frustration built up over, let's face it, like 9 years, you know. That 9 years, it was inside him, and he wanted to release it. He wanted back. He always admitted it. He wanted back on that stage, you know. And finally, he got the chance. This was it, and he went for it. And I think it was, you were just witnessing the. Some people might laugh at this, but the rebirth of the king, basically. If that, you know, that makes sense. And I think that was a major turning point. And I'm with Melanie, you know, this bit of the 70s was my favourite kind of time. The rest of his career was great, but that's my kind of favourite time. So, obviously, the special happened, bang, the King's back. And then Vegas, you know, they decided on Vegas for his return to live performing, which we all know Elvis was itching, absolutely itching to get back in front of the audience. And this brings me to a quick question I've got for you, Melanie. Talk about Las Vegas, but just he was presented by the International Hotel the gold belt for breaking attendance records. I've seen a photograph of you holding that belt. Obviously this belt was a big thing in Elvis's career. He wore it many times on stage. He wore it at the Madison Square Garden press conference in June 72 when he was asked about, we told you're shy. It's the famous bit where he stands up, opens the jacket, and he says, well, I've got this gold belt here, so I don't know where to get shy for. There's a picture of you holding it. How did it feel to be holding that belt that it was Elvis's and he'd wore so many times?
Yeah, it was amazing. When I got the email from the Graceland team, I was like, I can't believe I'm going to get to hold this. So I had to go completely on my own. I was so nervous. And then I was holding this belt and it was so heavy. And they said to me, they were like, make sure you're really careful with it. Like, don't drop it because it's insured for $1.5 million. And I was just like, oh, what? So I was holding it and it was just like amazing because, as you say, you can envision him wearing it. You can envision the interviews where he has it on. It was one of his favorite belts, right? So like it was crazy for me to hold it. And I also got to hold the one of his Vegas microphones as well. Rumor has it's the one that he was like put down his throat. It was awesome. It was a weird experience to touch something that has touched Elvis. I don't know, it was weird, but amazing.
I've got. I should have put the photograph of you in the. I do have that. I've still got the photograph. I don't know what the hell I've done with it. I'll put the photograph up on the. In fact, I think the photograph is up on the page. I put it on one of the posts. But as when I saw somebody say Facebook, I'm getting to hold the belt next month. Can't wait. As when I saw that photograph, and it's a really, it's a famous belt. One thing that I always wondered, when you look at the belt, did it ever break on stage? Because obviously he wore it the early 70s, and he moving about a lot on the stage. I wonder if it ever snapped. I know he burst his trousers many a time, but I wonder if that ever kind of snapped for him on stage.
I'm not sure. I've never heard of it, that specific one breaking. I know he had one of his suit belts break and came off, but I don't think that one ever broke because it's really, really heavy metal. So I don't know, it'd have to like snap or something. So I don't believe that one ever did, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think it would have been an amazing feeling to hold the belt that Elvis had wore so many times and was his favourite belt, So the other picture is obviously for That's the Way It Is, 1970. This was his comeback to Vegas. It was still on a high after the 68 special, basically, and he wanted back to Vegas as quick as possible. He wanted back on stage as quick as possible. I love the Vegas concerts because you could see he looked fresh, he looked reborn, and even during the rehearsal stage, you could see he was in his element, basically. What do you guys think? Do you think he was thinking to himself, right, this is my time and I'm grabbing it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely he's in his own. I think that's. All of these. If there's one thread that carries throughout, he is confident in any setting you put him in. Here too, of course.
Mm-hmm. And you can see watching that so he was having a lot of fun, and then there was plenty of ladies about. I will add that in. There was plenty of ladies about, wherever he went. I think one of the best parts for me was when he walked through the audience when he was singing "Love Me Tender." I don't know if you remember that scene when he just kind of sneaked off the end of the stage, side of the stage, and right through there, and then he jumped back and he says to his band, he says, "I bet you thought I wouldn't make it." They probably rip his jumpsuit off or something. The fans would be too much for him. So the Vegas years, and then through 70, 71, 72, he's on a high, touring constantly. all over America. Then 1972, Elvis on Tour came out, which again basically spoke for itself. It was Elvis on Tour, and he was up there, But when it come to 1970, everybody knows that photograph, the American Eagle. Another major accomplishment under Elvis's belt, pardon the pun. Hello off Hawaii, January 1973. It was the first ever concert to be beamed with satellite throughout the world. And it was seen by over 1 billion people.
Wow.
I've watched it many, many times. It's one of these you never get fed up watching,
And he didn't make a penny off of it. He donated the entire amount of money to Children's Cancer Fund.
Wow.
And that's it was the Quealy Cancer Fund, and he gave every cent that he was paid for it. He actually they done 2 concerts. They done a rehearsal concert the night before the big one, and they actually panicked the staff because he threw his cape or something into the. It was either there was one night through the cape, another night through the belt. Whatever night it was, he threw the belt into the audience, and so everybody was panicking. The belt's gone. We need a belt for tomorrow. Where can we get another belt? He's away the belt. But they managed to get it one flown in, and I know that the original cape that was made to go with the jumpsuit was near enough down at his ankles, and it was too big. So they had to shorten it and rearrange it. But I think this was a major point in Elvis's career, because don't forget, it was not long after his divorce with Priscilla. I think it was only 2 or 3 days gap between him going to Hawaii and his divorce. What did you make of the Aloha special, as it was known?
I love this special. This is one of my favorites. I can watch this whenever. But he does throw his cape at the end, doesn't he, into the audience? And I was always like, what happened to it? Because this suit is at the exhibit in London, and the cape is there. So I was like, what happened? And the guy he threw it to, so a guy caught it, and then he sold it to a collector pretty much straight away. And then when the collector died, he donated it back to Graceland. So that's how they have it back again, which I think is so awesome, because can you imagine how much that would have been worth? So what a guy to donate it back. I would have sold it for sure, I think. But I love this special. I love it. I think the way he kind of plays with the audience is, I don't know, it's just one of my favorites. I think I prefer this one to the comeback special,
What about you, David?
No, I got to agree with her. It was way different, more relaxed. It had that feeling that he was involved with the audience. The comeback special 68, that was staged. You could tell. This one didn't feel that way. Yeah, it really had that nice, I don't know, like you're out on the beach and you're listening to somebody play the guitar, sitting by a fire. So I got to agree with her. And you know what? I hadn't even thought about that until you brought it up. And then I'm like, yeah, she's right. That was that way. It was a lot more relaxed. Good insight.
What about you, David? Craig? I'm doing well with names tonight, Anna. What about you, Craig?
I completely disagree with her. No. Yeah, I'm listening to David. I'm thinking, well, they suck the oxygen out of the room. Yeah, I'm totally with her. Yeah, she nailed it. I mean, and again, you look at the pictures of Elvis. I mean, every time that when early on you showed pictures of him when he was 15, standing with his legs apart, confident in his own skin. And from there, and then when he was 21, standing, and the whole time in here, with his right hand out, there's one thing from when he's a teenager, just his confidence. And like to Melanie's point, right here, it's like he's just laid back doing his thing, you know, and it's cool. So yeah, she nailed it. There you are.
My favourite part of the Elvis, I'm with Melanie, this is one of my favourites, but my favourite part of the Elvis special is, it was a Science American trilogy, just at the bit, the flute bit, and you know the orchestra's building up, you know, the build up and the build up, and if you watch his face, I mean, his sweat's dripping off him, but you can see the passion and the sheer control in his face, and then when the music starts again, he points. It's the way he just points straight to his backing singers, and they kick in with Glory Hallelujah. Basically, it's just, I mean, it only lasts 10 seconds, whatever, that one bit, but you can see in that 10 seconds, just he's the man. You know, he's on that stage, he's in control, and nobody can top him, basically. And as we picture coming up, just Craig was saying about the stance.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't get away with that. You know, they get laughed off the stage. You know, but Elvis, he carried it off. You know, stuff like this. You know, that's for it's 1974, 1975. Now, you can see that stance there with the guitar and what have you, the Eagle suit on. He's just, nobody else would get away with that. That was Elvis, you know. And then obviously that is 1975. He's sitting down on stage. It shows, I think it shows two different sides to him. You know, that the one with the guitar shows that he's Elvis the man. But the sitting down bit shows that he's also Elvis, the humble guy, who's just sitting down, talking to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes it. I know what I mean up here. You know, it's just, I'm going to stop singing. I'm just going to sit on my backside and I'm going to talk to people. You know, and I dare say we probably had the house lights up when that was happening, and he's just talking away. I think that kind of shows two sides to him. Would you think?
Yeah, he would talk for so long. This was the era where he would just ramble. I've listened to audios because I don't know how, but a lot of it was recorded, and he would go from singing a song, the song would end, and then he'd have like a 7-minute dialogue just talking about, a lot of the time, nothing. And then he'd be like ranting and raving a lot about like how much he hated the press. And then he'd go, anyway, have you guys seen Blue Hawaii? And then sing Can't Help Falling in Love after like a 10-minute chat. I just think it just shows, as you say, he was just a human. He was just a person, and he's not just Elvis the singer. He's Elvis the human being as well.
I think also, something that's important, he was greatly influenced at this time by his addictions. And that really showed.
That's a good point, David.
It showed. And it was the sad part of what happened to him. And you're right, he would stop, and those ramblings, incoherent at times, were drugs talking.
Yeah.
He'd lose it, but he was so dynamic, nobody cared. No, it was like, hey, are you kidding? It's Elvis. So what? Yeah.
I don't. Somebody's put a comment up. Here we go. I've got no idea who that is or what it means. I mean, maybe it's because we've mentioned the drug bit. But here we go. There was a lot went on, in the media and the press about drugs, and at the end of the day, he was addicted to prescription drugs. It's an open fact. Everybody knows. But my opinion is, the guy was on the road 6-7 months a year. It was non-stop. And when he wasn't on stage, he was recording. Or it was taking time. He did take time out, but Elvis, he was more ill than people actually knew. There was a lot going on body-wise. People didn't know about it. So he did become dependent on uppers, downers, painkillers, which wasn't a good thing. But Mark defends us, he still got up on that stage and he was still Elvis. He never ever let his fans down. There was a few concerts cancelled due to illness, which is just human. It's normal, But he never ever forgot his fans. He never let them down. He always gave 100% from start to finish on that stage. And I think that should shine through more than with bad habits. I mean, he had bad habits. Everybody in this planet has got bad habits, of some kind. We're all human. But I think that should shine out more, the fact that what do you guys think? This is just my personal opinion.
I'd like to know what your bad habits are.
Mine's.
Me, not so much. I'll take you at your word.
I'm a smoker.
You're a smoker, are you?
Aye, that's my vice. That's my vice.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? He still got up on stage, and he was still, where he was on stage or input, he still gave 100%, 110%.
Yeah, and this was the time when he was desperate to go abroad as well and tour internationally, which obviously he couldn't do because of his manager. I think there was some issues with his manager being able to leave the country, the Colonel. He was just so desperate at this time to come to England. I think that was his main one that he really, really wanted to do, and Paris as well. And he just wasn't able to do it. So I think that really played as well into his kind of almost depression, I guess. And it just made him feel like he was stuck because he was constantly doing Vegas and he felt like he had no room for growth. And that was played on by the Colonel. He wouldn't let him do anything else because he was stuck in another contract.
Well, if you think about it, he was controlled by everything in his life. He was even controlled by his own talents, and that's the pity about it. He was greater. His persona was greater than himself, and he couldn't control it anymore. Elvis had become something that was. It's kind of like Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn had to put Marilyn on. When she was by herself, she was not Marilyn. And that's what happened with Elvis, I think. And he couldn't control it at all. So it was going to be dictated by the press, his fans, Parker's greed, and that was that. I think you're absolutely right. It was a time of such frustration for him. And then on top of that, he added the addictions. He couldn't, and again, losing more control. Pretty soon, where's your life going? You have so much of everything, you have nothing. And I think that drove him crazy,
The other thing, he gained weight. He liked his junk food, which we all, I like my junk food as well. We all do. But and he was human, so he ate a lot of, junk food and what have you. He put on weight, which is normal. But because he was Elvis Presley, he wasn't allowed to put on weight. So when he appeared on stage overweight, sometimes he was big, he's fat, he's a has. The press ripped him to shreds because he could put on a couple of pounds. And I think that was just totally, utterly wrong. But that's just my opinion. But he did want to play. He got so many offers to play Europe, UK, UK especially, and they were offering silly amounts of money, astronomical fees back then for him to do Wembley and stuff. And the Colonel brushed every single one off. No, he's not doing it. He's not doing it. We'll give you £10 million to do an hour and a half at Wembley. No, he's not interested. And that really did. And Elvis did have quite a few bust-ups with the Colonel over this. But then, the relationship had went on, that they'd been together that long. I don't think he should have sacked Parker. That's my opinion. He should have canned him years before, because he would have gone a lot better. But, you know, it's the way it kind of turned out.
Well, again, you know, I made a comment earlier about that. He was an artist. He was not a business person.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two very distinctly separate mindsets. I've been involved in both arenas most of my life, and people don't always mesh those two. To have somebody who can think business-wise as well as artistic, having that ability as well. And then his innocence, I truly believe he was a really innocent guy. I mean, listen to his songs and the content, the ones that he really wrote, the ones that he was involved in his gospel music. He's talking about some very pure concepts of love and acceptance and caring and just being, you know, a good person, period. Now, I'm not saying that's naive, because that's not. That's truly, I think, how people should think. But in the world he was entering and the business mindsets of those people in that world, wow, he was just fresh bait to the lions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt bad about him that way.
Just for the next 40, just his generosity. I mean, his generosity was legendary. You know, he gave away millions to complete strangers, buying them cars. There's a famous story, I don't know if you've heard, about the blind girl on stage. He was doing a concert once, and he lifted a little girl onto the stage. I don't know if you've heard that story. I've told it to Sarah a few times. And when he came up on stage, he realised she was actually blind. And she asked him, "Can I touch your face?" And so, you know, there's photographs. He was wearing his blue and silver eagle suit. And we girl just wanted to touch his face. So he said, "You know, of course you can, honey." And then he gave her a scarf. After the concert, he says to his staff, "Find that little girl, and find her parents." And her parents told him that she was getting in for, you know, she was maybe getting expensive surgery. And Elvis basically says, "Well, let me know." And he paid for everything, you know. And this is just a girl he picked out the audience. He says, "You know, I'll pay for the whole thing." And he did. You know, he paid to this little girl. And he kept in touch with the family. Kept in touch with little girl, you know, progress after the surgery, the doctor. He kept in touch with everybody, you know. And I mean, I could be here all night talking about the stories. You know, there's a story. The coloured lady went out and he bought 12 Cadillacs in one day, and he saw a coloured lady looking at cars, and he says, "You know, do you like cars?" He says, "Yes, but I can't afford one." He said, "Well, pick one." And he says, "I'll buy it for you." And that was it, brand new Cadillac. I don't know about how much it was back then, but you know. And he wrote, they says he wrote with 20 checks every year, Christmas time. He would write 20 checks to various charities, over thousands of dollars each. He bought President Roosevelt's yacht and gave it to charity. He bought the yacht and gave it away to charity. You know, and that's continued throughout his life. And somebody said to him one day, "You need to watch, the fans will want the shirt off your back." And his reply to that person was, "They can have it because they paid for it." You know, and he never forgot his fans. He would open the gates of Graceland, and you know, he's, as I said earlier, on big celebs, get big mansions, the fans come to the gate and they phone the police. "I want these people." Elvis would open the gates, invite them in. He would stand for hours down at the gates of Graceland or his home in Palm Springs, just chatting, signing autographs, whatever. You know, and he would drive around Memphis on his bikes, and just a normal everyday thing. He would just ride around Memphis, and his fans were the most important thing to him, apart from his family, of course. It was his fans, and a lot of people forget this about the guy as well. You know, he wasn't just a fantastic singer. He was a huge humanitarian. He never forgot where he came from, and his melons about the genes. You know, he never forgot his poor upbringing, and he wanted to he wanted to help everybody basically as much as he can. But what annoys me is a lot of people saw the drugs, the drug addiction, the putting on weight, the women, all that kind of stuff. They never saw the real Elvis, if that makes sense. Well, nearly at the end of this, so obviously here, I call this the last bow. This was taken June 26 in Indianapolis, 1977, 6 weeks before he passed away. He was a bit overweight. He did look ill, and from what we know, he struggled to get on stage that night, but he still got up on stage, and he never let his fans down. And this was him just about to leave the stage, and then, of course, 6 weeks later, comes the unexpected, tragic, sudden news that he's passed away. I know a lot of people slag off because of the way that he passed, but let's face it, nobody can pick when and where your time comes. Do you know what I mean? So, but the fact is, 42 years old, and that was it. There's two separate photographs there. These was if you're a real fan, you will know the real Elvis and not judgment. Exactly, I totally agree. So these are the scenes outside Graceland on the 16th and 17th of August. Also, Elvis has just passed away. The whole world is shocked. Everybody's trying to get to Memphis, the four corners of the world. The media, the press, television, everybody's all over it. And you can see in that one, the gates, it actually physically forced the gates shut. Just thousands and thousands of people. How did you feel when you heard that he passed? How was, obviously, Melanie, you weren't about them, but back 77, how did it hit you, Craig and David?
I just got married.
Yeah, I was 22.
Yeah, we just got married in June 4th of that year. And that happened. I was like blown away. I couldn't believe how he died, and he died at his age, and
Yeah.
it was very sad.
It was as if the world just stopped.
Yeah.
Because he seemed, I suppose people think a lot of stars, they think they're immortal, invisible, the fans, and nobody, everybody thought Elvis was, he'll go on forever, basically. But then came that day, 16th of August, that they were all proved kind of wrong. And so that's obviously his funeral on the 18th of August. I said earlier on that there's a hearse with a police escort. A 28 white Cadillacs in the funeral procession, because it was his favourite car, basically. And you can see the length of the funeral procession there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it was a bad day, that's Forest Hill Cemetery. There was a Liam where he was first buried. You see the amount of floor. There are better shots of it taken to up in the air. That just shows some of the flowers that were laid there by fans. This was before the funeral, I'm assuming. But he was only there for about 2 weeks, and then Vernon took the decision to move him and Gladys to Graceland because there were threats of, people going to break into the mausoleum to steal the body, that kind of thing. So him and his mum, obviously Elvis is in the middle, his mum's off to the far right, and you can just see the corner of Gladys, and then obviously Vernon, he joined them in 79, and then Minnie May, his grand, she passed away, and that's where he still is. What do you think of the, I'll be winding up, so I'm conscious of the time, we're nearly at the end of the phone, but what do you think of the conspiracy theory that he faked his death?
No way. People think he's. Have you guys heard about the Bob Joyce thing?
Aye, the pastor, the preacher.
Yeah, it's such a load of rubbish. But that's conspiracy theories for you. People comment on my videos being like, Elvis is still alive. He's Bob Joyce. And I'm like, no, he isn't. Like, there's no way that he is a random pastor and I don't know where the guy's from. But they do sound similar, but I just don't believe it for a second.
Well, where were you, David?
What do I think about all of that?
About the
Well,
fake
I have other words, but I'll use rubbish. Yeah, I totally agree. He's dead. Those conspiracy theories, we only wish. But what are you gonna do? Actually, he is alive. If you think about it, he rents in my head all the time for free. He's in everybody else's head here, so he won't die. And there you go.
What about you, Craig? What's your thoughts on the fake news death?
I avoid people who are part of conspiracy theories, and I avoid people who are part of MAGA. They seem to go hand in hand. So that's my 2 cents.
Just thought you'd get that in there, huh?
I've been waiting for an hour and a half.
That's what happened to him. They took him. The MAGA people took Elvis.
No, that's
it.
No, that conspiracy stuff is bullshit. So there you go.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, granted, back then, you know, or a couple of years after it, you know, there was stories, there was a lot of things that, I mean, I read a lot of it, I watched a lot of the, you know, the conspiracy stuff, just like, and there was a few things that never fit, that just didn't fit, you know. I'm not going to start, because that's a whole other story, and, you know, there was a time when I thought, you know, well, maybe he did, you know, maybe. You know, because the guy had the money and the means to do it, you know. I mean, I know there's a theory that Jim Morrison, for the Doors, that he did it, you know, but it's never been proved. So there was a time where I actually did think, well, there's a lot of bits and pieces that don't fit into the puzzle. So maybe there is something in this, you know, but...
I think he's with Jimmy Hoffa and they're living on an island someplace.
Possibly. Could be. Could be, but see that's his graves, and then as you can see, you've got Benjamin and Lisa Marie, who we lost this last year. They are buried on the other side of the Elvis's grave, and that's on the other side of that fountain, and that kind of brought it to an end. You know, obviously Lisa Marie. She'd been out for some time, but nobody expected Elvis to pass, you know, but Lisa Marie was kind of bigger shot. She passed no long after the film came out, the premiere of the film, what have you. And if you look at the footage, mate, I think it was 2 days before she passed. She does look really, really ill. But, you know, she's back home at Graceville now beside her dad, you know, and her granddad and her gran, basically. So just to sum it up, how would you start with Melanie? If somebody had never heard of Elvis in their life, you know, and how would you sum up Elvis Presley?
I would probably say he was the king of rock and roll. You know, he was so hugely influential. Like, look at those pictures that you showed of all of those flowers outside his house. The only thing I have ever seen that's been like that, because I live in Windsor, which is very much where the royal family live, and when the Queen died, that was what the front of the castle looked like. And that's the only thing I can compare it to. He was so famous. Like, I don't think that we have anything that compares to it today. And I would just say, you know, when he passed away, I wasn't around, but I was talking to my granddad today that I was doing this, and he was like, oh, did you know your great grandmother was a huge Elvis fan? And when she found out he died, she locked herself in her bedroom for the whole day and just cried. And I think that just shows how much people really feel like they know him. People really feel like their whole life is just, they just feel as though they know him and they can relate to him. And I think we'll never have another superstar like that. A lot of people compare him to Harry Styles, and I'm in this generation of people who should be loving Harry Styles. And as much as I think he's great, I don't think that he will ever have that same superstar element that Elvis had. And that's how I would describe him.
Thank you. That sums up. What about you, David? How would you sum him up?
Well, it'd be hard to follow what she just said. She kind of just covered it all. There is nobody else. Be hard pressed to find somebody who has that same star quality, that energy. And you're right. These other performers, however they are, were great. But no, not even. Even great performers of the past, like James Brown, for example, who called himself the greatest showman on earth, right? Hardest working man in show business. He admired Elvis Presley. Everybody did. There is no other. He won't be duplicated. I can't see it.
What about you, Craig? What's your? I was going to say your thoughts. I don't mean thought. You're going.
Trying to follow Melanie and David seriously. Iconic. I mean, there will not be another Elvis. I can't imagine somebody leaving their imprint on the music scene. I mean, there was not anybody that had the impact prior to Elvis. And I mean, we had Michael Jackson, of course, but I mean, there was nobody like Elvis before. And dying at 42 years of age, I mean, rest her soul, it's like Princess Diana. I mean, that when you die way premature, then you're just takes it to a whole other level, So, and I remember when he died, we couldn't process that Elvis passed, So, no, there'll never be anybody that comes close to Elvis Presley. I can't imagine it.
No, I totally. The three of you named it all on the head. One thing I would add is that it just shows how much an impact it was and how much is still thought of. It's nearly almost 50 years since he passed. Now you compare, no disrespect to them like Michael Jackson, Jim Morrison, they're still loved by their fans. But if you look at how Elvis mania, whatever you want to call it, is following, take Melanie, for instance, I mean, just quickly, they were doing it a few years back. They did Elvis Live. It was interactive video with his band, TCB band. I went to see it 5 times in Glasgow. James Burton, Jerry Schiff, Ronnie Tuck was there. And the place was packed. The place was absolutely mobbed. The motorways or freeways, as you call them, were jammed with people trying to get in. And the thing, I like myself, I wasn't giving a toss. It was Elvis. I was going, and that was it. And I had the pleasure of meeting Ronnie Tuck and James Burton, shaking their hands and what have you. And the thing I noticed was the audience, they ranged from about 6 to 60. The amount of young people that were there, teenagers, and their Elvis scarves, T-shirts, whatever, you name it, they were all done up, Elvis, and they were there. And the whole place, I don't think anybody sat down the full night. Everybody was on their feet, And so it's nearly 50 years since he passed, and his fan base is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You even look at TikTok, where I found Melanie, the amount of videos that are on TikTok about Elvis, people talking about him, his songs. And as I say, again, emphasize, nearly 50 years has passed since we lost him. And the guy's still number one, and I agree, there'll never be, as John Lennon once said and Paul McCartney, before Elvis there was nothing, and after Elvis there's nothing. You know, the Beatles have admitted, Springsteen, Bob, they've all says, you know, if there hadn't been an Elvis, John Lennon said, if there hadn't been an Elvis, you would never have had the Beatles. You know, Cliff Richard, Tom Jones as well. You know, Tom Jones, he's still going strong. I think he's in his 80s or something now. He spoke, him and Elvis, you know, they were very close back in the Vegas years. He said, you know, nobody can touch him. Nobody will ever touch Elvis. You know, and these guys are legends in themselves, and they all admit it was Elvis that made their career possible. And I think that kind of sums it up, you know. But we'll wind up there, but thanks very much for coming on, guys, girls.
Nice to meet you, Melanie.
Nice to meet you, Melanie.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Yes,
I love chatting about Elvis, so.
good for you.
Elvis, you could talk on that because there's that much, you know. We just kind of skimmed the surface, basically, you know.
You know what the problem with Elvis is, don't you? The problem with Elvis is that we all want to be Elvis, but we can't. So we're going to rely on the good people like Melanie to keep us informed. That's right.
Hey, David, is that your Elvis impression there?
Cheap, but there it is, man.
I'll say this.
Scott, the mere fact that you had to ask would suggest there's a few areas he needs to
I have
work
some
on.
work to do.
Requires a little bit more work.
Thanks again. So good to meet you, folks. I have someone knocking at my door. I don't want to tell you who it is, but we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, guys.
Love seeing you again.
I'll see you, Melanie. I'll talk to you soon about the paranormal show coming back. Well, I bet you've forgotten. Yeah,
We'll see you again, no doubt.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Chat about our new films coming out.
great, Dave. Fantastic. Talk to you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.